Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Metarealism. Let's get rolling. This is going to be a very different episode in the way that it is arranged, because what I am calling it is Science and Religion as a confluence of two streams. And so this episode may be, I guess, a bit controversial, although I don't think it should be. And hopefully, what I mean by that will become clear as I go through the substance of this episode. As those of you who follow me in this podcast will know, there are two basic subjects that I deal with here. One of them is dialectical metarealism, and particularly Maoism, third worldism, or as I sometimes call it, socialism from below, third worldism, fourth worldism, which is my unique slant or approach to Maoism, third worldism. And the other is my own religion, the Baha'i faith. Now, I am always careful about discussing those things together for one basic reason, one basic reason, one basic reason, and that is that the vast majority of members of my religion, to the best of my knowledge, using all the skills of observation that I may have as a sociologist, are not communists and are certainly not Maoist third worldists. In fact, I would bet, if I did bet, that there literally are no Maoist third worldists who are members of my religion, the Baha'i faith. And that is fine with me. I believe in unity and diversity. And so whatever views people have in their own lives is up to them. It's not up to me. I do not get to make decisions for other people. I am not responsible for what they think, and they are not responsible for what I think either. But I feel as though it is important that I provide some level of explanation for how I can be both of these things: a Maoist third worldist, for example, and a member of the Baha'i faith. That would seem to many people, including one person I know with whom I have had some, I'm not sure whether to call them heated arguments, but I guess they're close to that, some heated arguments with, who is a very, very strong anti-communist. Now, I do not know whether most Baha'is are anti-communists, but my guess is that that would be true. Most Baha'is are anti-communists, and they base that on a statement written by the guardian of the Baha'i faith, Shoghi Effendi, in which he condemns communism. Now, I have read through that statement myself many times. And the interesting thing is, I agree with it. I do. And so what Shoghi Effendi is referring to as communism, which I think is a bad thing, what he is talking about, kind of authoritarian, materialistic brutality that has been demonstrated by some communists throughout the 20th century, is not something that I advocate. Again, I am a Baha'i. And as a Baha'i, although I am not a pacifist, pacifism is shunned in the Baha'i teachings. Pacifism is also shunned by most communists. So that is something that those two different positions have in common. And so I have no desire to attempt to um, convince people that the statement by Shoghi Effendi on communism has no relationship to what I am talking about. That is not my job. I very rarely will mention Maoism, third worldism, or my own dialectical meta-realism, or socialism from below, third worldism, fourth worldism, in my conversations with Baha'is, unless I know that person very well. Then I will sometimes. And there are a couple of people that I know that I regularly discuss this subject with. Some agree with me and some do not. But let's begin with the foundation: science and religion. The harmony of science and religion, a basic principle of my religion, the Baha'i Faith. Now, what is meant by the harmony of science and religion? Well, first, with science. Here in the US, we have a rather limited view of science. I think that we may be the only country in the world which holds on to that very limited view. So people will often get into arguments about what is and what is not a science. I remember where I worked before I retired for 30 years. In my early years of working there, I was having lunch with a few of my colleagues, and one of them, a philosopher, not a sociologist, made the statement that sociology is one of the humanities. It is not one of the sciences. Now, this was a very intelligent man. And so I admit that I was somewhat taken by surprise when he made that statement, because I thought, well, surely he must know that in most of the world, that is to say, in the world excluding the United States, the humanities are viewed as one of the sciences. The word science in English comes from the Latin word knowledge. That is true in many languages. In Arabic, the word for science is ilm, that also translates as knowledge. In German, which is a language that we rely upon a lot in sociology, the term is Wissenschaft. Wissenschaft translates literally as knowledge ship. Schaft is the German equivalent of ship, as in scholarship. And so a good translation into English of Wissenschaft is not really knowledge ship, which doesn't really make any sense in English, but it is scholarship. And so when we think of scholarship, what do we think of? We think of scholarship in a wide variety of different fields. And that is the way in which the sciences are conceived of outside the United States. In the UK, for instance, there is a term, the human sciences. The human sciences is a broader term than the social sciences. It includes the social sciences, but it also includes things like literature and philosophy, which are not considered as being social sciences. And so the human sciences are, in most of the world, just as legitimate as the biological sciences or the physical sciences. Just as legitimate. Again, it is primarily in the United States that we make that strong and even harsh distinction between science and everything else. Science is scholarship. The debates on what is and what is not science are often based on this idea that there is something called the scientific method. As any scientist, I think, could tell you, there is no such thing as the scientific method. There are many scientific methods. In my own field of sociology, we have many scientific methods. And that is true in most sciences. They have many different scientific methods. And that is the way it should be, because you adapt what you know, you adapt what you are studying to the precise context in which you are placing yourself. And so, for example, in sociology, we have the scientific method of survey research, the scientific method of participant observation, called in anthropology generally ethnography, the scientific method of experiments, the scientific method of content analysis, and so on. Many different scientific methods, all appropriate for different areas of study. Is one better than another? Maybe, but it is not for me to say so, nor would I ever do that. I am open to the broad array of knowledge which exists in the world and which are studied by scientists. And again, when I say scientists, I mean scholars. So scholarship and science are really the same thing. That is science. When I talk about the harmony of science, viewed from that very broadened perspective with religion, I am talking as a Baha'i about the revealed religions, meaning the religions which have been revealed by the prophets of God. Otherwise, I end up with a kind of Durkheimian definition of religion. And if you don't know what that is, I will tell you: a system of beliefs and praxis or practices focused on the sacred, the extraordinary, which unites people into a moral community. That is a very broad definition of science. I'm sorry, of religion, not of science. And it makes it impossible to talk about the harmony of science and religion, because what do you mean by religion? Well, as a Baha'i, not as a sociologist, as a sociologist, I use Durkheim's definition. But as a Baha'i, I do not. I look at religion as a revelation given by a prophet of God. And the term religion of God, in a even broader sense, as a reference to all of the revelations brought by all of the prophets of God. Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, Krishna, Buddha, the Bab, Baha'u'llah, all of them brought revelations. Their revelations came as a sequence, which is referred to in the Baha'i teachings as progressive revelation, like going through the grades of a school. Progressive revelation. That is what I believe in. So when I talk about the harmony of science and religion, I am saying that scholarship needs to be harmonious with the revelations brought by the prophets of God. That's what I'm saying. That and nothing else. Whatever the prophets bring to us is true, in my view. The interpretations made of what those prophets have said, which result in denominations and sects and movements and cults, are not necessarily true, or are not necessarily entirely true. But what the prophet says is a standard of truth, and I accept that on face value. Likewise, science or scholarship. Science or scholarship, let's just say scholarship for the time being, needs to be in harmony with what the prophets have taught to us. Now, does that mean that I can do that myself? No. Of course not. I am not all-knowing. I do not have a so-called God's eye viewpoint. My knowledge is very limited. So I can only take my own knowledge in sociology, like dialectical meta-realism or Maoism third worldism, understand it, and then attempt to some degree to reconcile that with the teachings of my own religion, my own revelation, the Baha'i revelation, or the Baha'i faith. Now, when I say reconcile, I don't mean forcing them into a single compartment. When I am studying Maoism third worldism, when I am studying sociology in general, I study sociology as sociology. When I am studying the Baha'i faith, I am studying the Baha'i faith as a revelation of God. My assumption is that there is a harmony, but I do not need to force that harmony. In fact, I can't force that harmony. To do so would be a grave error on my part. Forcing things to agree with each other is a fallacy. You simply cannot do that if you are a person of conscience. And so I never do that. I accept it. I accept that there is a harmony between scholarship and the Baha'i faith, or there should be a harmony between the two, but I don't try to make them harmonious. And yet here, I will give you an illustration of how science, scholarship, and religion, in this case, the Baha'i faith, can be seen in harmony. And so I realize I may have just contradicted myself, but not really. Because what I'm saying is, I have never tried to force my own scholarship to be in harmony with my religion. But when I see a harmony, when I see an agreement, I point it out. And that is what I'm going to do right now. So let's begin with Maoism third worldism. In my view, Maoism third worldism is about something that is referred to in the teachings of the Baha'i faith as the lesser peace. The lesser peace is the peace that will be established by the nations of the world as a kind of political activity at some point. I would say that we have already entered into that process, but we have certainly not completed it. But that peace is something that will be done by the nations. It will not be done by the Baha'i community. Now, of course, Baha'is as citizens of nations, may be a part of the work toward the lesser peace, but it will not be something that Baha'is do as Baha'is. So the lesser peace is an entirely non-religious peace. It is peace based upon some type of political agreement. I don't know, maybe like treaties, maybe like some type of world government or world governance, if you prefer. But it will not be a spiritual peace. It will not be, to use the common Christian term, the kingdom of heaven on earth. No, the kingdom of heaven on earth, which is commonly referred to in the Baha'i teachings as the most great peace or the golden age, will be established by Baha'is and is, I would say, being established by Baha'is at this very moment. Right now, there is something in Baha'i communities around the world. It is called the Institute process. Baha'is are trying to figure out ways to broaden the appeal of the Baha'i faith, to become a more integrated or consolidated community, to reach out to other people, to build our community, and ultimately to lay the foundation for the kingdom of heaven on earth. So as a Baha'i, I am interested in the kingdom of heaven on earth, the golden age, or the most great peace. As a sociologist, I am interested in the lesser peace. And to me, again, the lesser peace is, or I hope it will be, Maoism, third worldism. That is to say, what I believe is that the first communist or revolutionary socialist activities, revolutions in other words, will occur in the third world, the developing world, and perhaps the fourth world or indigeneity as well. Perhaps. Because that is where the greatest amount of dialectical or revolutionary potential exists. Once communism is established in multiple varieties throughout the third and fourth worlds, then, but only then, perhaps, if the first world is still around, and I am not sure about that, but if the first world remains, then those revolutions might spread from the third and fourth worlds into the first world. There is no guarantee of that, but then again, there is no guarantee that we as human beings will be here tomorrow. We might destroy ourselves through climate change. We might destroy ourselves through some type of nuclear war connected with the situation in Gaza or the situation in Ukraine, which I have addressed many times in this podcast. And so that is basically an example of how I can take those two streams. The first, science or scholarship, in my situation, sociology, and second, revealed religion, in my case, the Baha'i faith, and bring them together, not to force them together, not to create some kind of artificial plastic harmony between revealed religion and scholarship, but to legitimately develop them both and to watch to see if any similarities appear or emerge, and then we can recognize them and work with them and bring ourselves closer to a time when hopefully scholarship, science, and revealed religion will work together as the streams in a single convergence. That is a day that I hope and pray for every day of my life. For the time being, this has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow. And now we wrap up.